Integrated graphics, the CPU's appendix which for long has been the laughingstock of PC gaming. But over the last couple of years, AMD has made massive strides in the power of this vestigial organ. And now, there's a new contender to the throne. From Intel. But first,
for too long has the world suffered under an oppressive USB naming scheme. What was this? Written by Dostoevsky?
Well, today's video sponsor LTTstore.com has the solution with their new LTT USB cables, which is not only more flexible than braided cables thanks to its silicon sheathing, which also gives it better UV resistance, but it tells you exactly what power and data transfer capabilities each cable has right on the cable. So if you don't want to guess about the performance of your cables anymore, get some LTT USB cables using the link down below. Now, word on the street is that Intel's new Arc B390i GPU is a beast. Not an AMD Strix Halo kind of beast, but that's a high-end APU. I wouldn't really call the GPU in there a vestigial organ. The B390 falls more in line with AMD's already very impressive 780 and 880M iGPUs. In terms of specs, we get 2.5 GHz max core frequency and 12x to the power of E cores, whatever that means. And the one we're looking at today is stitched to Intel's new CPU that they apparently named by throwing up on a postcode directory. Although it does seem like they forgot to add AI to the name, which is weird. But before we get into the performance of this new chip, let's have a quick look at the laptop that Intel sent over with the chip in it. A very exciting dual display Asus jobby. Oh, it's such a tiny little 100-watt power brick. It's so cute and square, look at that. And the moment I opened the box, it was clear that Asus was real serious about their new dual display ZenBook. Oh yeah, they're getting that Apple smell down. That's good. They're buying their perfume at the same place. Straight on the bottom, aside from some other exciting stuff, which we'll get to in a second, we have our little Intel stickers. So these are the new chips, which is exciting, although what's much less exciting is the Copilot PC bit underneath that. Ugh. Now, this little bit is a kickstand that you can use to prop up your dual screen laptop. In terms of I/O, on the one side, we've got some Thunderbolt 5 going on. At least, I think it's Thunderbolt 5. I'm not sure if all the ports on the laptop are. There is another one on this side, and then a square USB port with what I'm assuming is our power button. There's also a bunch of ventilation with some sexy looking heat sinks peeking out at me. That's always very exciting. But let's open it up and have a look inside. I think that it should do the one-hand openness because, yes, it does. It does have quite a thick bottom booty, so it makes sense. This bit is a keyboard. So this is a modular little keyboard that comes with the laptop. This is a nice touch. I like this a lot because typing straight on a display kind of sucks ass a little bit. But when you can just prop that in there, you have a pretty standard feeling laptop keyboard with a reasonable sized trackpad. So I think this little bit makes the dual display laptop actually usable. And then because it's kind of magnetic in how it attaches, it feels really satisfying to put on and off. Like you can see here, we've got little contacts and then you have some contacts on the bottom and this just kind of slips in like that. And it feels stable enough that it doesn't feel like a cheap implementation, you know, that's cool. It also has Bluetooth, which you can connect to the laptop with, so that when that's set up in some exotic dual display fashion, you can have this on the desk so that you still have more normal inputs for your exciting laptop. I mean, that looks futuristic as hell. So now that we've had a look at our futuristic as hell laptop, let's acquaint our palates to iGPU gaming performance in 2026. And I think the best way to do this is by having a look at the current benchmark AMD vestigial iGPU's performance. Now for this video, I'm going to be using a mini PC with a Ryzen 7 7840HS in it, which has a 780M iGPU. Now that's not the newest version of this iGPU, the 880M is slightly faster, and the higher end 890M, according to Geekom's testing, is up to 30% faster than the 780M. So when looking at the results of this video, bear in mind that AMD does have a faster vestigial iGPU than the AMD one that I tested tested in this video, so taper how excited / disappointed you are by these results by between 20 and 30%. With that, let's see what the 780M can do. Now with CS2 running at 1080p low settings, we are getting a very playable experience. We're running well over 100 frames per second, so this will even be good on a high refresh rate 1080p display, and that's all on some iGPU action. Like I said, I remember the 780M being kind of a beast. So if you are just an esports enjoyer, this little iGPU gives a pretty solid gaming experience. Like, this is something that is very much usable. Now with Cyberpunk, I'm being a little bit more risque here by stepping up to 1080p medium settings. We really need to put these iGPUs through their paces. Now on the surface, mid 30 frames per second doesn't feel that crazy, but again, this is 1080p medium settings on an iGPU in Cyberpunk. I think that this is a pretty solid experience, considering that with like the UHD 630 5 or 6 years ago, we were getting this frame rate at 720p low settings in CSGO. Yeah, these things are really getting way more powerful. Having said that, I wouldn't really want to play Cyberpunk like this. This is close to a usable experience, but it's not quite there yet. With Battlefield 6, as is always the case, I had to spend ages figuring out how to enable secure boot on the mini PC, which is always annoying, especially considering the fact that the BIOS said it was enabled despite Battlefield 6 not working. Anyway, when I eventually figured it out, I had lost all of my patience for the game already. Oh, shaders have to compile. Oh my god, I've been waiting for Battlefield 6 for so long. I miss when you could just put a disc in a PlayStation 2 and the game would just launch. Okay, fair enough. Sometimes the game wouldn't launch and you'd have to take the disc out and like rub it on your shirt and put it back in. But still, I long for rubbing the disc on my shirt. So now that I'm done with my moaning, we get to move on to Battlefield 6 running at 1080p medium settings without any upscaling. And we're getting in the low 30s here. And it's low 30s that does not feel good. I would not want to play this online at all. This isn't like CS2 where it's a usable competitive experience. So that's one of the ways where even these more powerful new iGPUs fall down, is when it comes to like modern demanding multiplayer games. Having said that, the fact that this is running at 1080p and we are using medium settings, like, this is kind of impressive. You would expect it to be running way worse than this. So it's still cool that this kind of like afterthought little iGPU is doing hella work here. Wow, that lens flare is so annoying. Now finally, we really need to kick these iGPU's teeth in with some Unreal Engine 5 action and Stalker 2. Oh wow, Stalker 2 looks pretty rough at 1080p low settings. You lose so much detail, but it does get you relatively close to the performance we saw with Cyberpunk running at medium settings. And again, I really wouldn't want to play the game like this, but considering that it is actually running at 1080p on an iGPU, again, I'm impressed. I sound like a broken record here, but yeah, things are going well with this iGPU so far, and we haven't looked at the new shiny Arc one yet. I mean, it does dip into the mid-20s often, which, considering that I complain about this game running at 80 frames per second, is clearly not a great sign of playability, but we're talking about iGPUs. And with that, it's finally time to move over to some Intel Arc iGPU action. The ZenBook's setup process has the standard Windows 11 trauma attached to it, but at least with the second display you have something to do while waiting for the updates. Oh wow, then you can watch an ad for the laptop you already have on the bottom display while Windows 11 sets up. But once you do load in, those two OLED displays are magnificent. My word, are they beautiful. But anyway, it's not about the laptop. Let's see how it runs some games. So now we're finally on some new Intel iGPU action. I am very excited to see how this performs because I've heard that apparently it's a beast. Wow, over 200 frames per second depending on where you look. That is a pretty solid step up over the 780M. The game feels decently more smooth, and our frame rate also bottoms out much higher. We jumped from an average of 140 to 200 frames per second, which is significant. Unfortunately, the GPU telemetry wasn't working with MSI Afterburner, but I did find a workaround for it in Cyberpunk. Wow, it is kind of jumping all over the place. It started off in the mid-30s, but it's now almost at 60 frames per second. In Cyberpunk, our frame rate jumped a whopping 55%. And it takes Cyberpunk at 1080p medium from feeling like crap to actually kind of being usable. Like, yeah, it's still not the smoothest feeling performance, but it's almost running at 60. And that is without any upscaling happening. So, if we turn on ultra quality, whatever that means, let's give that a try, it's well over 60 now. So this is like a solidly usable gaming experience on an iGPU that isn't one of the mad Strix Halo products. I then decided to use a very savage way to get some more detailed iGPU telemetry. It is very interesting to see how it kind of takes the iGPU a moment for the performance to ramp up. But anyway, now according to Intel's performance overlay, we're getting about 100% GPU utilization. So this is an example of like maximum performance of this iGPU, which makes the power draw figure really impressive. Like, it's jumping between 12 and 16 watts on the iGPU. For this kind of performance, that's insane. With the 780M, it was using about 30 watts while we were gaming. So not only are we getting a 55% performance uplift over the 780M, we're doing it at half the power draw. Wow, that's really cool. Now, one thing to note, we do have access to more video memory. The 780M was using about 4 gigs, whereas this is using about 4.5. But getting back to the power draw, one of the huge benefits of it is insane laptop acoustic performance. The whole time testing Cyberpunk, I couldn't hear the laptop at all. It was a borderline MacBook-esque experience. Very impressive. And the temperatures, which we'll see in a second, are just as impressive. Now with Battlefield 6, we've jumped from an average of about 29 to almost 50 frames per second. Again, a huge jump in performance. It's wild how much better it feels going from about 29-ish frames per second to about 50-ish frames per second. The game feels so much better. Again, like with Cyberpunk, we're at the point where we now just need to enable a little bit of upscaling and the game is actually playable. Now, I decided to download Hardware Info 64 to get some temperature readings on the GPU, and we're sitting at 65°C? Whoa, I mean, I guess that's a byproduct of how little power draw we're actually seeing on the iGPU, but look at that! And while gaming, the CPU was drawing just 28 watts. Hardware Info reported a total system power draw of 85 watts, which gives 66 degrees Celsius on the CPU, with the laptop not making any noise. Very impressive stuff. And then finally with Battlefield 6, I did notice that the iGPU in the laptop was using almost 8 gigs of video memory. So I decided to retest Battlefield 6 on the AMD system, but give the AMD iGPU full 8 gigs to play with. However, despite the fact that Battlefield 6 seemed to use the extra video memory, it didn't give us any additional performance. I love how Battlefield 6 just plays itself. Like, I've not been participating in the game at all, and I've just made progress. So here it is again, where it starts at 20 frames per second and then climbs up to almost 40. That is very interesting. Stalker 2, interestingly, is kind of struggling. We're getting a big issue with stutters and stuff. And I think part of that has to do with RAM utilization. I mean, we've got 27 gigs of RAM utilization and then 5 gigs of video memory. Assuming Windows 11 was at fault, I restarted the system, and it had a massive impact on the performance. Okay, so now that I've restarted the laptop, we A, have performance overlays working, which is kind of weird, and B, we have less RAM utilization. So instead of being pegged at 27 gigs, it's pegged at 25. So that means that we're not getting the same stuttering that we got before, and it's giving us really good performance. We jumped from 28 frames per second to 45, which is a 65% jump in performance. Interestingly, Stalker 2 was drawing a bit more power than any of the other games, peaking out at about 22 watts, which is still less than half what the 780M was drawing. So in conclusion, Intel's back, maybe? I mean, this Panther Lake chip makes Apple's silicon efficiency blush. But honestly, this just makes me excited for more Arc GPUs. Intel, please make more desktop Arc GPUs. If you can imbue this efficiency magic into them, you may have a real winner on your hands. Which brings me to the end of the video. Let me know what you think of this chip down below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this one. And until the next video, bye-bye.